Hello Raptors fans and welcome back to Raptors Report. Today we are going to be discussing the Toronto Raptors game against the Orlando Magic. But before we do that, I want to talk about some of the prospects in this year's draft, and one prospect in particular. I think with yesterday's showing against the Orlando Magic, we should probably be looking at the best player possible that the Raptors could attain, the guy who has been rumored to be the #1 overall pick for the past couple of years. This player has been a phenomenon through high school and certainly has begun his college career, perhaps not the best way possible, but still very, very, very impressive. And of course, I am talking about Cooper Flagg. Yes, the main event, the Duke freshman who is kind of setting the basketball world on fire. Cooper Flagg is one of the most exciting American prospects that has emerged. There have been a lot of international players that have gone at the top of the draft over the past couple of years or so, and Cooper Flagg is certainly one of the most exciting American prospects that's come around in a long time. And I kind of want to discuss what I've seen from him as a prospect, what his strengths and weaknesses are, how he could fit on the Toronto Raptors. Hint, he would fit very well, but I kind of want to explore what it would mean for the team if the Toronto Raptors were able to select a guy like Cooper Flagg. I think he's a very exciting prospect, so let's get into it. One of the most interesting things about Cooper Flagg is the fact that he is a very large, mobile, strong player who has good foot speed, good instincts on the floor, and really can play the game of basketball. When you watch him on the court, it just pops out to you. Oh, okay, this guy is a basketball player. There's nothing really too awkward about his game. His game is pretty cookie cutter in terms of just how it looks. Everything kind of looks as it should, as you would expect a basketball player to look. His biggest plus so far, and it has really been kind of his calling card so far as a player, as a prospect, is what he can do while he is on the floor on the defensive side of the ball. And I think that even in his college career, some people were saying like, oh, he's disappointing, he hasn't been that good. They are not looking at the defensive side of the ball. Perhaps they're looking at his percentages, and we'll get into that. But when you watch him play on the defensive side of the ball, you are starting to see a guy who will be an impact player in the NBA. And even if it's just on the defensive end, which I don't think it will be, he is going to be one of the top defenders in the NBA, and it's almost certain. Cooper Flagg has excellent size for position. He has great instincts, both help and when he's on the ball. I think his help defense and his rim protection, especially from a forward, is great. And when you add in the athleticism there, you are looking at a player who is going to be making multiple defensive plays every single game. When a player goes inside the paint, you can tell that the alarm bells are starting to go off in his head, which is why I'm interested about his possession, but we'll get to that later. Good help defenders. So I've talked about this in the past. Good defensive bigs have a spider sense of when teams are going to be getting into the paint, when they should be rotating back and getting into position in order to cut off drives to the rim and provide help around the basket. That is what not just centers, but also good defensive forwards are always thinking about. Well, there's going to be a defensive breakdown, or they're running a play where there's going to be some penetration inside. How can I get over there and make a play? Cooper Flagg has that, for sure. It's also apparent when you look at the stat sheet, he is both a good shot blocker and good in terms of getting steals. Those blocks and those steals can materialize when you are thinking a couple of steps ahead, when you are sniffing out what the other team is running and you can get into position. Sometimes it involves getting into the passing lane. Sometimes it involves coming up from behind a player who's posted up to get a steal, poke the ball loose. Sometimes it comes from just stripping guys who are bringing the ball up through your arms. He is very good at getting into position and then using his hands and his athleticism to create defensive plays. So he is going to be an impact player on defense probably from day one. That also goes for rebounding. Why don't we fold this into where I think his position is going to be in the NBA, because there's certainly an element of winginess to his game, his ball handling, his desire to shoot shots. The form on his shot is good too. His ability to get into the paint using screens, his kind of explosiveness getting to the rim, those are all very good attributes, and they point towards a kind of wingy player. However, I see some elements of a big here, and I see some elements of a kind of power forward style player. And there's a really funny tweet that says, "Man who's only seen Boss Baby, seeing his second movie." I'm getting a lot of Boss Baby vibes from this movie. Well, let me make a comparison here. I'm seeing some Scotty Barnes in Cooper Flagg. Scotty Barnes, I've mentioned before, it is still kind of up in the air. Like I'm still trying to decipher whether this guy is a wing or a guard or a big. There's some positional, I don't want to say question marks because that implies something bad, but there's some mystery here as to what he is going to be at the next level. Is he a big? Is he a wing? And I do see some elements of big in his game. One of them obviously was what I was mentioning, the help defense. That's something that you expect bigs to have. There's also the rebounding. He's a very good rebounder. He's good at getting into position. He can jump. He likes to box out and put his body into people. There are some really good elements there that if the situation calls for it, maybe he could be playing center. And I've also made a comparison in the past where he kind of looks a little like Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant has always been a very lithe and agile player who can move around the court very quickly, kind of like a stretched out guard. Cooper Flagg is a little less agile than Kevin Durant, but a lot of times in the past, we've seen Kevin Durant, not in the starting lineup, they don't play him at center very much there, but some of the time, and this isn't just the Suns, the Nets have done it, they play him at the center position when there isn't that bruising down low presence. And I think that could happen as well. I think on the next team that he's on, if the game goes small, I think he could play as a big in certain situations because he does have good rebounding instincts, great help defense instincts. I think that is something that he could do at the next level. Next up, why don't we talk about his offense? Because this is kind of where the question marks start to happen. This is where we've seen the biggest flaws in his game, the part that has not really translated as well as when he was the super prospect in high school. And that is on the offensive side of the ball, and especially from the shooting. So Cooper Flagg, I think, has a pretty good looking shot. I'm not seeing a ton of flaws with the shot just as it looks. I think that he has a high release. He gets it off pretty quickly. His footwork is fine, but the results have not been there yet. He is only shooting 27% from three. And we've seen this before. So Franz Wagner, who's a pretty similar type of player, he hasn't really been a good shooter. He has struggled from the three-point line. And that's despite his shot looking decent. Like there's nothing majorly wrong with his shot, but it just is not accurate enough. So there's always the potential that could happen. I am high on Cooper Flagg figuring it out on offense. I think that he is a very fluid athlete. Right now, his ball handling needs work. I think that that's probably one of the weakest elements of his game. You can see it sometimes when he drives into the lane. He will get an advantage by bursting off of the dribble, and when he dribbles into traffic, he can get swarmed or he can lose control of the ball. He requires some more creative dribbling. He needs to be able to work on his handle, especially in traffic. There's a lot of different ways that larger players can be effective using a dribble to get into the paint, and I think he's going to figure it out eventually. It's really about reps and practice and getting better and more confident with the ball in his hands. And right now, it just looks like he needs more time in the gym and more work on his handle. However, he does have a couple of very polished things about his game. One thing that he's very good at is pulling up. So he has a really deadly pull-up jump shot, at least in terms of manufacturing a clean look. And this is one of the most important skills to have as an offensive weapon. If you want to be a number one player in the NBA, you have to have the ability to pull up and hit jump shots. That is where a lot of the self-created baskets in the NBA come from, is via jumpers and being able to transition from dribbling the ball and getting to where you want to go into a shot attempt on the rim. It is very quick. the motion and mechanics when he is able to get to his spot. And I think that that is a good indicator for success at the next level in the NBA, because that is a huge portion of NBA offense from star players is that pull-up. As he works on his shot and gets better and better, he is going to be able to refine that skill. I think that he has a lot of potential there. Another thing on offense is his game sense. He knows how to play the game. He is always looking for open teammates. He has good processing ability. This is a guy that is making smart passes, making good reads. If he's a pick and roll ball handler, or if he gets the ball in the post, or if he's at the top of the arc in an isolation position, he can find the gaps in the defense and he can see his teammates very well. It seems as though he has an advanced basketball IQ on both ends of the floor. He knows what's happening. And obviously that's what you want to see. If you're going to be putting the ball into the hands of a guy, you want them to be able to make those smart decisions. And I don't think that's going to be a problem for him at the next level. He really does seem to understand what's going on. The last thing that I want to talk about is the finishing ability. And I think that this is where he could be one of the best players in the NBA, especially at the forward position. Cooper Flagg has excellent body control. He has very fluid mechanics when he is going to the basket. For a player his size, he can really get up and finish. And I think that that is going to be something that happens in the NBA as well. He has gotten a bit bigger. I think he's put on some weight, and I don't think that he is as insanely explosive jumping to the basket. With that size, and he still is a very good athlete, he can finish above the rim, no problem. He can jump 2 foot, 1 foot. He can catch alley-oops, he can finish plays, explode past his man, get it on the glass, and finish that way. He can jump off of 2 feet and slam it down. This is a guy with size, and it looks like his frame is going to fill out very well. He has very broad shoulders. He's going to be a rugged player. And another thing is that he doesn't shy away from contact. This isn't a guy who's trying to fade away, make layups while falling down and stuff. He's taking it to the rim, and he is trying to put the ball in the hole. He's not pussyfooting around out there. In all, I would say that Cooper Flagg has a very tantalizing set of skills and strengths as an NBA prospect. He is extremely well-rounded. That is one of the things that is exciting when you are scouting a player like this. There are no obvious flaws in his game, and even the flaw that he has currently, which is his shooting, so 27% from 3 is not good, especially with the 3-point line in college, which is shorter. You would expect him to be shooting better there. When you look at the mechanics, there is still potential there as a shooter. But in terms of everything else, when you look at his rebounding, his motor, his basketball IQ, his defense, rim protection, finishing ability, first step, those are all very good or elite. And when you don't have a lot of weaknesses in your game and you have the size that Cooper Flagg does, this is just a very safe pick. The floor is very high on Cooper Flagg. And if you were going to get him in the NBA draft, you're almost assuredly getting an NBA player who's going to stick in the league for a decade plus. This guy is going to be a good NBA player at the very least. And of course, he has the potential to be a star or even superstar, especially if his shot comes around and he starts making threes at a high 30s, low 40s percentage. You're looking at a guy who could be one of the best offensive and defensive players in the NBA. Just a very exciting prospect. And if the Toronto Raptors were to draft #1 overall, it would be extremely hard to turn down a player like Cooper Flagg with the tools that he has. So I'm excited to watch him, and hopefully the Toronto Raptors do get to call his name on draft day, go up there, put on the Toronto Raptors cap, and shake hands with Adam Silver. And let me tell you, it looks like the Raptors are going to have a pretty good chance to draft Cooper Flagg, especially if they're going to continue to turn in stinkers like they did against the Orlando Magic. I want to talk about this game. It was extremely disappointing. I think we'll start with one of the most notable players, Immanuel Quickley, who I was, giving roses to deservedly in the first game because of his control of the game, the tempo that he was providing, all the lead guard skills that I was talking about him having, and he really just turned in a stinker. 11 points on 17 shots. He was 1 of 9 from 3, 4 rebounds, 11 assists, which is good. 3 turnovers as well. It really came down to the 3-point shooting. And Immanuel Quickley, as a player, his archetype a guy who likes to come off of screens shooting, a guy who really operates behind the jump shot. It really kind of ties his whole game together. He sucked from 3. 1 of 9. That's just terrible. In terms of what he was bringing, the 11 assists, I think that he still plays very well. He's still able to do all the stuff that I was talking about, get past his man, make your offense kind of work. But when you're taking 9 possessions and you only make 1 of them, that's a level of futility that is going to end up in a loss. If you're one of the top, if not the top offensive cog, and you shoot 4 for 17 from the field, it's just very difficult to win a game when your number 1 option or number 2 option is scoring that inefficiently. The other stuff that he brought was fine. I still think that the things I was saying before still apply. I think that I like the look of what's happening with the ball in his hands. But yeah, it was just a nightmare game from him from the field, shooting the ball. It's very difficult to look past that. And unfortunately, when you make a glowing episode about a guy saying this guy is going to revolutionize and change things for the better, and then they go out and have a game like this, you kind of get a bit of egg on your face. But I'm still confident. It could be that the injury is still bothering him. Who knows? Hopefully there are more efficient nights ahead for him. Next up, there are 2 guys you could put as the best player in the game. I'm going to give it to a guy who I usually don't give it to. He's usually second, but I'll give it to him because he was the leading scorer for the Toronto Raptors. Jakob Poeltl, 25 points. He missed 1 shot from the field, 11 for 12. He has 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, 1 block, 3 turnovers. He was monumental on offense for them. His floater, especially the baseline floater, where it looked like a carbon copy, the same play over and over and over again. And kudos to Scottie Barnes. I think that he had a bunch of those plays, especially late in the game, where he's just feeding Jakob Poeltl, who is popping that shot, that little floater, and it just kept going in over and over and over again. He also did a really good job guarding Goga Bitadze. Goga shot 3 of 9 from the field. He looked scared of Jakob Poeltl. Looked like every time he caught the ball in the post, Jakob Poeltl had his hand up, Goga was trying to shoot over him, and sometimes he had the moves to kind of get around Jakob Poeltl, but couldn't get it to finish. It was a mess defensively, and so you can't, I mean, the center is certainly the most important defensive player on the floor. I think he did okay in certain aspects, but there were some defensive breakdowns, and you could say that he was one of the reasons that things looked kind of out of sorts for the Toronto Raptors. It was just a horrible defensive game, and if your center is the number 1 defensive guy, then you can't exactly give him the best marks. So I think it was a good game from him, especially on offense, maybe not on the defensive end. Next up, Scottie Barnes. Scottie Barnes had a good game. 20 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, and only 1 turnover. I think that there were times when on defense, he wasn't aggressive enough. He was not providing as much help as we're used to. Everybody kind of looked sluggish this game. Everybody kind of looked like they were going through the motions and frustrated and not really giving a very good effort, pretty much to a man. And Scottie Barnes was one of those guys. I think on offense, he had a really good game. His mid-range jump shot is fantastic. This is his new signature move. I think that this is a great thing to operate around. He had a really encouraging thing that I saw. So Jonathan Isaac is one of the best defenders in the entire league, regardless of position. He is long, fast, disruptive, gets in passing lanes, can stick to guys like glue. He's a rim protector. He pretty much does everything. And there was a possession where Scottie Barnes got the ball in the post. He set up the turnaround jump shot very convincingly. And Jonathan Isaac tried to block Scottie Barnes' turnaround jump shot. Scottie Barnes did an excellent job of punishing the overcommitment and stepped through and finished with a very nice layup on the inside. Excellent use of his primary shot, which is the turnaround, to set up the counter move, which was the step through layup. It looked very polished. I am loving this new system that Scottie is using to generate points for himself. It wasn't the most efficient night, 20 points on 19 shots. The Raptors should be getting more free throws than they're getting. Scottie Barnes goes inside and is fouled a lot, okay? He shot only 2 free throws. He missed both of them, so whatever. The Orlando Magic have a defensive reputation that precedes them, and I'm sure is on the minds of the referees, but it seems like the Toronto Raptors are getting the short end of the stick, especially with the number of times they go inside and they go through contact and absorb contact. Scottie Barnes getting 2 free throws. He should be shooting, especially with last night's game, more free throws, and then the offensive efficiency will be right there. He also shot the 3 pretty well too, 2 of 4 from 3. So I think that he was getting it going in other areas, and it was more in the flow of the offense. He wasn't just standing at the top of the arc and kind of jacking up shots, which has been my criticism of him. He has been mostly taking it where I am just like, yep, this is a totally acceptable number and volume of 3-point shots, and I'm totally fine with it. Even if he went 0 of 4 from 3, I would be okay with that number of shots, totally fine with it. He went 2 of 4 from 3, so great. I thought the offensive process was very good from Scottie. Unfortunately, the defensive effort from everybody was not very good. Next up, we will go to Ochai Agbaji. Ochai Agbaji had a really good night shooting the ball. He was 3 of 5 from 3. He ended up with 15 points. He was the nice outlet valve where the Raptors, when the Orlando Magic would commit in the paint, they could get it to him. He did a very good job moving without the ball. And his hands, when he caught the ball on the perimeter, he got into his shooting motion very quickly. Just a great job from him on offense. This was a tough night on defense. He is one of the Raptors' top perimeter defenders, and the Orlando Magic seemingly were shooting free and easy. They were getting pretty much all of the shots that they wanted on the perimeter, and they were pretty open. And the Magic are not a very good 3-point shooting team, but when you give a team as many open 3-point shots as the Raptors did, then you have to start questioning the commitment of the defensive personnel, especially the perimeter defenders, and that falls to Ochai Agbaji. I think that his defense is usually pretty good. It's usually a plus. Last night, nobody really had a good defensive game, so good for him for making all those 3-point shots, but, defensively, everybody's got to step up when you're playing a club that is so shorthanded. This should be a game where you're trying your very best to get a win against a very shorthanded club in your own building, and the effort was not there, and he was one of the people that could have put in a better effort. Lastly, I praised him last game. I said that it was one of his best games of the season. This game was one of his worst games of the season. He was utterly dreadful on both sides of the ball. Grady Dick. This is a depressing game. 8 points on 11 shots. He was 2 of 7 from 3. A lot of the shots were open threes, and he was missing them. We saw the issues with his finishing, although, again, just like I said with Scottie, he goes to the rim, he gets fouled, and they don't call a foul. What can you say? There were a couple of plays where he went into the lane, got fouled, and was not rewarded. 8 points on bad percentages, 5 rebounds, an assist, a steal, a turnover, not good. On defense, terrible. Out of position a lot. He's still young and he still makes mistakes, and coupled with the fact that he's making mistakes mentally where he's not in the correct position, and then the foot speed is still a big problem going around screens, trying to recover to players who are on the perimeter, trying to stay in front of players. It was just a bad performance from him on both sides. I did not enjoy Grady Dick last night. Next up, we'll just run through the bench pretty quickly. Bruce Brown, I don't think he had a very good game. 2 points on 2 shots. All of his points came from the line. He kind of fell victim to the Orlando Magic defense, which is very good. He likes to get opportunistic baskets. He again tries to go to that floater when I don't think that should even be a part of his game. Can't really say he had a very good game. Kelly Olynyk, the defense, again, big problem. Although on offense, he is kind of doing his thing. He only had 1 assist, 6 points on 2 of 3 shooting, 1 steal, 1 turnover. I think that there is some potential, like I mentioned it at the beginning of the season while he was injured, is that I wanted to see him playing alongside some of the other defensive guards on the Raptors bench. So Davion Mitchell and Bruce Brown. And when those 2 players are on the floor with Kelly Olynyk, I think it makes a bit more sense, because what is his issue? Rim defense. What are those 2 players good at is stopping players from getting into the paint, stopping players from running their sets. And so there's some synergy there, and I don't think it was the worst game from him, although his post defense in the first half was just, so bad. In the second half, it wasn't as bad, but not an amazing game from him by any stretch of the imagination. Davion Mitchell had a really good night, and his defense was excellent. Excellent. He only played 13 minutes. He was 1 of 1 from 3, but 4 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, but he was all over the Magic guards. And the Magic have struggled when they have their best guys out. They rely on running plays and creating looks through the pick and roll. And he is just really good at disrupting that kind of thing. And he was excellent. He was really, really, really impactful on defense. He won his minutes for sure. Great game from him. Jamal Shed, he had a reputation in college of being this like dog on defense. And I don't think it's translated as well. Like, it's odd because he has done a good job of translating offensively from college. I think that that's a big surprise for me, is how effective he's been offensively in terms of running plays, making shots, all of that sort of thing. But his defense, there's still some rookie mistakes there. And he's not as, like, when you see Davion Mitchell play defense and you're like, ooh, okay, this guy is really hounding it and making it difficult for teams to get into their sets. He's not at that level, at least yet. He had 2 points. He was 1 of 2 from the field. He had 6 assists, a steal, and 2 turnovers. So I still think that his passing is probably one of the best aspects of his game, one of the things that I've been most impressed with. Jacoby Walter, he is still not being featured on offense very much. He had 5 points on 3 shots, which is good. He made a 3, and it was an impactful 3. It was late in the game to kind of bring the Raptors within single digits, I believe. I think that once the Raptors clear some space, we're going to be able to see more Jacoby Walter featured in games. He played 18 minutes, which is quite a bit. It was the most off of the bench, but there are a couple of guys in his way right now. And I think that once those players are gone, we're going to start seeing him play in the 25 plus minute range. So, and yeah, that was the game. It was an extremely disappointing game, especially from a defensive perspective, and a very disappointing game from 2 of the players who are supposed to be the offensive contributors. Grady Dick and Emmanuel Quickley, those guys are supposed to be your shooters. Those are the guys who are supposed to be punishing teams for packing the paint. Those are 2 of the guys who are going to be the way that you beat a defensive club like the Orlando Magic is from having efficient shooting nights from your top 2 shooters. Didn't happen. And then defensively, everyone looked a step slow. Everyone looked out of sorts. It looked like they were all hungover or something. Horrible. Really just almost to a man, excluding Davion Mitchell and maybe a couple of guys. Like Jakob Poeltl was fine, but not as good as he usually is. This is a game that the Toronto Raptors could have won. And when you look on paper, especially when Jalen Suggs goes down with injury, that is a game that you would think that the Raptors should be right in, and they were not in the game. That's the issue, really. If the Raptors had a hard-fought loss and somehow the Orlando Magic were able to scrap it out, I would be more forgiving. This was lifeless and bad, and you really have to give credit to Jamal Mosley. The guy has really coached up this team. They have an identity that goes past the star players, and it really seems like, especially Tristan da Silva, wow, what a performance that guy had. He was nailing his jump shots, and he was operating in the pick and roll. He was getting into the paint and finishing with some very nice looking moves. I thought it was just a great game from him, and defensively he was good too. He was covering Scotty Barnes, making him work for it. Next up, the Toronto Raptors play the Bucks on Monday at 7:30. The Bucks have been hot and cold. They started off chilly, terribly, and then they won the in-season tournament with a big burst. And now they're kind of back to being a kind of whatever team. They are hovering around 500. They're obviously a beatable team. The Raptors are at home. I'm not going to say that the Raptors are like a lock to lose that game, but after watching the moribund effort from the Raptors last game, it's hard to put any money on them. I don't know what to expect. They looked good against the Nets, and not just because the Nets suck. I mean, that is one of the reasons, but it looked like the energy was there and they were competing a little harder than they did against the Magic. I hope that they can bounce back against the Bucks and play a bit more of a competitive game. And that's the episode. Let me know what you think about Cooper Flagg. If the Raptors get the #1 overall pick, is he the slam dunk #1 overall guy? Or have other players creeped in? Maybe Dylan Harper. There are some other intriguing players at the top of this draft. Let me know what you think about him as a prospect, and also kind of what you think about the Toronto Raptors, especially the loss against the Orlando Magic. Where are they trending as a club? Are you feeling higher or lower on different players on this team? Let me know here in the comments, and also on Twitter and Blue Sky, where you can reach me at Raps Report. Love talking to Raptors fans. We're the best, as I always say. And if you haven't already, please leave a like and subscribe. It always helps the channel grow. And as always, thank you for tuning in to Raptors Report, your source for in-depth Raptors content.